especially Chinese brands. Look it up. Look at the name of the brand. Type it into Google and find out where they're located. If they're located in China, be wary. I'm not saying every Chinese brand is bad. I know a lot of components come from China, but whenever there's a Chinese brand that's manufacturing and assembling and distributing a bike, a lot of times they use just the cheapest stuff. I just got a bike recently. I'm not going to name the brand, and the pedal crank fell off. This is right out of the box. The front tire became dislodged, and the handlebars were loose. It's like you got to check everything really tight, and a lot of the components are just flimsy to begin with, so even if you do ratchet them down, they still come loose. Be wary of Chinese brands. I know a lot of people buy stuff from like Alibaba. That's not a bad deal. You get good prices, but just be wary. And if you have one of those bikes, tighten every bolt before you leave, right? And really just kind of mechanically, like with your hands, roll the tires and roll the cranks. Make sure everything's working, because a lot of times stuff out of the box is crap, and they just didn't tighten it well in the factory. At the end of the day, you get what you pay for. It's striking to me, other than a few rare brands like Jetson, their little Jetson Bolt Pro for like $350, $400. It's actually pretty good quality. The Swagtrons, they're pretty cheap. You get pretty good quality. But the average full-size bike that is $800 to $1,200, typically they're skimping in some way. They're giving you a really crappy derailleur. They're giving you really crappy brakes. The components from like the brake levers to the brake cables, all that kind of stuff is just really cheap, and it's not going to last. The average bike you want to last at least a year and a half, 2 years if you're going to spend that kind of money. Don't go for something that's really, really cheap, unless it's from a known brand. I understand Electric is pretty good. Again, Swagtron pretty good. For the price, Jetson pretty good. But a lot of these bikes from unknown brands that are really cheap, you're getting what you pay for, and that goes even, in my opinion, to like rad power bikes. A lot of their components are shit. Their bikes are pretty cheap, but you're getting what you pay for. They lie about their range. They lie about the amount of power coming out of their motors. They say that everything's got 750 watt. It's really 500 watt. Back to that, don't believe the range that you're hearing. A lot of e-bike manufacturers are saying that their bikes have like a 48 volt, 10 amp hour, or 12 amp hour. Which, in my opinion, if you're the average sized person, you're not going to get more than like 12 to 15 miles. But they say they go 60 miles or 50 miles. Really? Bullshit. It's crap. Don't believe it. Here's a good rule of thumb. If you have a 48 volt, 10 amp hour battery, and let's say you're 160, 170 pounds, you're going 10, 12 miles, maybe 15 if it's flat. If you have a 48 volt, 15 amp hour, you're going upwards of 18 to 20 miles. 48 volt, 20 amp hour, you could go maybe 25. 48 volt, 25 amp hour, maybe you could go 30. It's kind of in that cadence, okay? In my opinion, the average person, again, if you're 160, 170, 180 pounds at least, you want at least a 500 watt motor. You can get a small bike with a 350 watt motor, but you're going to be pedaling a lot, I do have like the V-Volt Centauri, and it has a 250 watt mid-drive, which a lot of those European bikes have. You can deal with it, but you're going to be pedaling a lot. It just doesn't have the power to pull you up anything, right? Any kind of hills. The average bike, especially if you want to use throttle, you got to have at least a 500 watt, I would opt for more of a 750. You got some nice pulling power. You got some nice torque. 500 watt is kind of my minimum. Unless I'm getting like a really small fun bike, I'm not going to go for anything less than 500 watts. You might be surprised that folding bikes, for the most part, are actually pretty good quality. A lot of people think that they have, that failure point in the middle where the folding component, bends or breaks, and they think that the bikes aren't very sturdy. They are. The average folding bike is just fine. You lock it in place, especially if the locking mechanism is secure. You're in good shape. You're not going to have any problems. So I wouldn't fret about getting a folding bike. Like the Electrics. I hear good things. Ridden some. The Aventon Cinch, for example, one of my favorite bikes of all time. These are folding bikes, no problems, okay? And they're really good for small form factor, putting in the trunk and that kind of thing. Adjust the brakes before you ride. The average brakes on an electric bike have some give, and there's going to be some rubbing, and occasionally especially with mechanical brakes, the brake levers aren't going to be tight. Flip the bike upside down and tighten the brake cable at the brake caliper, and pull it through and make it tight. Also check whether it's mechanical or hydraulic, check the brake pads and make sure they're not rubbing against the rotor. Pretty easy to do. Just loosen the brake calipers a little bit and roll the tire and just jiggle the caliper to make sure it's in place where it's not rubbing, and then just tighten it back up. Mid-drives. So mid-drive motors definitely have a lot more power than hub drives, but they do have problems. You do break chains. There are problems sometimes with the motors cutting out. Granted, a lot of this has to do with the controller, but all in all, I used to think that mid-drives were the be-all and end-all, right? But I have a Cab Motorworks Eagle with a hub drive. It's got a BAC 4000 controller. They really amped up the amp output, and it's freaking torquey as hell, and it's crazy powerful. So, I don't know. All things being equal, I think I'd probably opt for more of a hub drive at this point with just a good controller than a really solid mid-drive. They're extremely torquey, and they cause problems. A couple examples. I had a 750 watt mid-drive from Bafang from a company in the Valley in California called eBikes. The motor cut out. It was kind of finicky. I had the Luna folding bike and the Luna Banana, and the mid-drive cut out on me several times. I think some of this has to do with the controllers. I think both companies were putting too much amps through, but and then I broke chains on all three bikes. So you'll never break a chain on a hub drive. So all things being equal, you're going to get tremendous torque from a mid-drive, but I would opt for a hub drive at this point with just good controller, When you buy an e-bike, make sure there's somebody, whether it's the manufacturer, if you're close enough to bring it back in, or a local bike shop that can do maintenance for you. The average person might have problems fixing tires. The average person might have problem aligning the derailleur, adjusting the brakes, especially if you have hydraulic disc brakes. You need to bleed the brakes, get the bubbles out of there, the tubes. So the average person is going to need some help at some point. If you don't have anybody locally, you're kind of in trouble. I get people asking me all the time if I know of anybody locally that can help, fix e-bikes, and there's only one shop. And, if you're not nearby, that might be a problem. So if you're near the manufacturer, bring it back to them. A lot of people buy bikes from across the country or even across the globe, and then they have problems and they don't know what the hell to do. A lot of e-bikes are kind of specialized, and only the manufacturer knows what to do. So just something to think about. Batteries last forever. I sell a lot. I get a lot of e-bikes, and then I sell a lot of them. And the first thing people ask me is, how long is the battery going to last? Don't worry about it. E-bike batteries are going to last forever. They're going to outlast the bike. It's just never going to be a problem, trust me. Every e-bike I buy, I would, and you should, install two things. Tire liners. These are a rubber layer that lays between the tire and the inner tube, and it causes is the bike more puncture proof aspects to it. So a nail's going to go through and it's going to hit the tire liner instead of the inner tube. And then install green slime in the tube itself. It helps to instantly fill little holes if they occur. It fills the holes with green slime and it kind of seals them. So always do tire liners and green slime. If you have a bike with pedal assist, you're obviously going to be using pedal assist perhaps as much as throttle because you want to save battery, you want to get some exercise. When you're sitting on the bike and the pedal is at the very bottom, right? You have the pedal all the way at the very bottom. Your knee should be basically at like a 15% bend. A lot of people are riding around with bikes, their seat's too low, or the bike is too low. Like a Super 73, for example, you can't get better than like a 40% bend because the seat is so low. So if you want to have the right amount of torque and leverage when you're riding, pedaling, you want to have like about a 15% bend in your knee when the pedal's at the very bottom. Be wary of certain brands. Certain brands have the name, but they don't have the quality. I used to think Luna was a tremendous brand because they sell the Sur-Ron, and nobody really has problems with Sur-Rons. But a lot of their bikes are they've got problems. They over torque them. They put higher amp controllers in them that can't handle it. They use mechanical disc brakes on almost everything. A lot of their bikes don't have suspension. I just don't know. So I'm not a big fan of Luna, for example. The Luna Banana had a lot of problems. The chain kept popping off. The controller kept cutting out. The brakes kept loosening. The derailleur would have problems. So I don't know. All in all, I'm not a big fan of Luna. Their Luna Banana was just a crap bike. It had so many problems. So Luna's a problem. I know one of the best-selling brands in America is Rad Power Bikes, but I've owned 6 of them. They all claim to have 750 watt, but really it's a 500 watt with 750 watt max or peak output. So they lie about that. They use crap components. Most of them have really crappy derailleur, and the brakes are crap. The components are just shit. So it's a really well-known brand, really high-selling brand, but just the components are crap. Here's some good brands to consider. One of the best brands you can buy from is a Venton. Oh, here's another brand. Another brand that can be very wary of is Himaway, in my opinion. I know they've come out with some new bikes of late, but I had the Himaway Cruiser, and just, the brakes were crap. The brake cables would always come loose. I know these are like fringe components, but the light broke. The fenders are just complete crap. So I know those are just like little frills, but if that's crap, then you got to question the rest of the bike. So be wary of some brands that have good names. Just make sure you do some research and you look at reviews. Before you go for a ride, every single time, spend 30 seconds and tighten all the key bolts, especially the brake calipers, the pedal cranks, the bolts, whether it's quick release or permanent on the wheels, even your seat. I've had so many things just come loose while I'm riding, and it causes problem. Mag wheels are better than spokes. It may go without saying, but mag wheels, just there's no jiggling, there's no rattling. Spokes will never. Spokes have problems. Spokes sometimes come loose. I've had spokes break, especially if you're going off road. They get loose and they jiggle and they rattle. Mag wheels are just stronger overall, and they actually look better. The average person needs two things on an e-bike, especially if you're going to be riding in the street. You need a left mirror. You don't really care if you're always going to be riding on the right side of the road, especially in America. You don't care what's on the sidewalk, but you care what's on the first lane. So you want to have a left mirror so you can see what's happening from oncoming traffic, and you should have a front and rear mirror, a front and rear light. Whether they blink or not, it's just good, even during the daytime. A lot of times you're riding. I ride a lot, and a lot of times people are getting ready to pull out from the side of the road or pull out from a parking lot onto the road, and you're coming and they don't even see you. But having a light is just so much better. So definitely get a light. If you're a small bike, if you have a small folding bike, or you have a recumbent bike or one of those 3-wheel bikes, definitely get a big flag. You want to be visible. I kind of said this before, but before you buy any bike, make sure you do a lot of research. I don't just mean looking at their website and trying to figure out what the components are and yippity-yoppity and looking at the reviews on the website. No, go to Yelp. Go to Amazon if they sell it on Amazon. Go to other places that are going to have independent reviews and read the reviews. You're going to see a lot of things that are going wrong with the bikes, and you don't want to buy one that has bad components. And also, customer service on a lot of these places is just shit, and you're going to hear about it on in the reviews. That brings me to bikes with crappy service. A lot of bike brands have crappy service. Himaway, Rad Power Bikes, Cab Motorworks, Super 73. They don't spend a lot of time on their service. They don't have enough people, and they don't have a good enough response time. I've had problems with every one of these companies and others. So be wary of companies with crappy service. Again, look at reviews. People love to talk about how shitty the service is on companies. Don't be fooled by nominal versus peak watts. Again, Rad Power Bikes, for example, their Rad Rover has a 500-watt nominal motor, meaning when it's running at just a normal pace, like on a flat road, its max output is about 500 basically. But when you're going up a hill and it's really stressing it, it might put out 750. They like to say it's a 750 watt motor, but that's a lie. It's a 500 watt motor nominal. That's always when they rate a bike. It's the nominal output, the standard output. But it has a peak of maybe 750. A lot of bikes have wattage meters on the display, and it might say, here's a good example of a good on the good side of things. The Velotric Discover 1. It has a 500 watt motor, but when you look at and that's nominal. When you look at the peak output, it goes up to 900. And the same thing with their Nomad. It has a 750 watt motor nominal, but it goes up to 1200 on peak. Same thing with the Pedagos. A lot of them have a 500 watt motor nominal, but 1200 peak. So be careful when they say it has a 750 watt motor, when it really might have a 500 watt motor with 750 peak. It's not the same thing as a 750 watt motor. A 750 watt motor is going to have a lot more power than a 500 watt motor that's peaking at 750. Don't overpay for bikes. A lot of bike brands, it's just the name. Again, Pedigo, big name. They really claim that they have great service. Local companies, they're all over the United States, but their bikes are just outrageously expensive. You can get a bike for half the price. Another good example is the Suron for like $4,200 versus the Segway X260, for example, for almost $5,000. It's the same bike. And actually, the Suron even has more torque because it has a better controller. So a lot of bikes, you're buying a brand. You're not buying, quality components. So be wary of certain brands. A lot of bikes that have mechanical disc brakes where the cable reaches the brake lever, a lot of times there's this little silver O-ring, and you'll know because it's really bright and shiny and it's got notches in it. Those are just crap. You know, you can spin them with your finger. Those brakes are shit. Those silver O-rings don't hold in place very well. It's just indicative of a shitty brake system. So if you see that, be wary. Fat tires, great to have, great for lowering the tire pressure a little bit and getting some extra bounce. They're difficult to get off the rim. They're difficult to get on the rim. Can't inflate them with a CO2. So just be careful that there are some drawbacks to fat tire bikes. That being said, learn how to change a tire. You're going to run into problems whether you have a fat tire or a skinny tire. You're going to have problems with a flat tire at some point in your life. So learn how to change it and learn how to pump it up. Whether you have a portable air pump with a battery operated, or you have CO2 that can fulfill the requirements for the tire. Learn how to change a tire and bring with you those inflating tools and also the brake levers or the levers to get the tire off the rim. Weight matters. A lot of times you buy a bike and it feels real robust and sturdy, but you can't lift it in your freaking car. A good example is the new Sondor's Metacycle. It looks badass. It's a motorcycle-looking e-bike. It's 300 pounds. Just to give you an example, I have the Cab Motorworks Ego, which is a tremendous bike, very fast, very powerful, probably even more powerful than the Metacycle, and it's only 160 pounds, right? Or a Suron, 140 pounds. So get a bike that isn't overly heavy. Weight does matter, and especially when you're trying to lift it up a ramp into your truck or pick it up and put it in your trunk, whatever. Weight matters. Torque matters. A lot of bikes have 500 watt motors, but they have enough torque to get you up a hill. A lot of bikes have 750 watt motors, but the torque is shit. Super 73 is a perfect example. They claim all their bikes have 1200 watts, but really it's a 750 watt motor they claim 1200 peak. I question that. But anyway, there's no torque. It's all high-end speed. So you can't get up a freaking hill. So be wary of bikes that have crappy torque. Another thing to consider is the gear range of the pedaling. So a lot of bikes, like a Super 73, like the Rad Runner from Rad Power Bikes, like the Rad Mission from Rad Power Bikes, Propella, their SS, they all have like one gear. And if it's a low-end gear, then you can get up hills. The Rad Runner, if you have like a 10-speed, it has like a gear 3. So you're not going to get tremendous high-end, but it has enough low-end that you could actually get up a hill with its 500-watt motor. The Rad Mission, 500-watt motor, but it has a high-end gear. It's like gear 7. So you can't get up a hill because it doesn't let you pedal it fast enough, but you could go higher speeds. Super 73 has a very low-end gear. So if you're trying to pedal at like 20, 25 miles an hour, you can't. You're air pedaling. But you can go up a hill Super 73 is an anomaly because the torque is so bad. But you could go up a small hill because it's got low-end gear, but just the torque's not there. But anyway, so torque matters, gear range matters, and that's going to do it for this video. If you liked, please subscribe, please give me a comment. I always get back to my commenters, and thanks for watching.